Hi everyone, it's Jen at Wakeland with remarkablycreated.com. In today's video, we are going to take a look at using Brusho Crystal Color to alter this beautiful Petal Passion Designer Paper. So Brusho is what we're talking about. This beautiful black and white paper, even though you see one corner colored, it was just to show the possibilities of that. But you've got these amazing 12 prints. It's 6 sheets. They're double-sided, one print on each side. And we're going to take a look at some of the really fun ideas and possibilities when you take the Brusho to that paper. And then I have a couple of cards that are in process of being completed. I kind of got stuck, so I thought that maybe you could help me complete them. So let's take a look at working with Brusho on this beautiful paper. So first you need your Brusho color, and there are 5 in a box, and this happens to be a brand new box, so watch me. Oh. Let's open this up and let's bring them out. I like to keep the box to store them in, and you can simply cut off the flaps or tuck them in, whatever works for you. And you have 5 different colors, and of course using basic color mixing, you're able to go ahead and create additional colors by mixing and matching those colors. It is not recommended that you actually pull this tab and open them up from releasing the lid, because it's a very, very fine powder and it will get everywhere. Instead, they recommend putting a pinhole in the top of them, and I'm choosing to use color coded push pins. Yellow. So you have orange, yellow, green, blue, and red as your basic colors. So we have our Brusho. I like to work with Stampin'UP's 11 by 17 grid paper. There's 100 sheets in the pack. It will last you a very long time. It's great for keeping your surface clean. I use it for measuring. You've seen me use it in so many different ways in videos, so I highly recommend that. We're going to be working with Aqua Painters, Wink of Stella. I've got some paper already pre-cut and ready to go. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about stencils that I created with vellum and how that didn't work. Because we always got to share the failures too, right? I love it on Pinterest when they say, did you try this? Or they talk about Pinterest fails. So we've got some paper cut in different sizes. I like to work on chipboard. So if you've got cardboard from designer papers, cardboard laying around, I usually cut it to 5 by 7 and have that to work on. I also then have painter's tape to hold it down. And I have some paper towels for when we get messy. So let's just go ahead and pull one of those sheets off now. I keep really buggering this up and tearing it funny because I keep thinking it's one of those rolls that has a half sheet, not the old-fashioned full sheet. So we've got all that ready to go. So let's start first with just real simple. And let me pull, which paper do I want to play with first? Let me look at the backs here. Let's pull this one here for just a second. We're going to go ahead, and the reason why we tape it down to chipboard is you're going to be adding water to it, and water can cause it to buckle, and we want to try to keep it flat, and I allow it to dry then on this board, or if I decide that I also want to speed up the drying process with a heat tool, I have that to happen too. I'm grabbing just as little of the edge as possible, but you also want to start with a piece that's bigger than your intended finished size. So if I'm starting with 4 by 3, I might start with 5 by 6 or something like that. Just starting with a little bit bigger piece than what I need. So now in this case, we're simply going to just start with dry powder. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to just shake on some yellow. And it's hard probably to see there out there that it's actually coming out. Is it? Okay, let me make a bigger hole. There we go. So I'm just kind of tapping it in a few different little places randomly. And I'm also going to take just a little bit of red. And the red is pretty brilliant, so you want to kind of go a little easy on the red. It's a very beautiful deep crimson. It's actually called Brilliant Red, and that's a great name for it. And then we're going to come in with a little bit of water, and we're just going to spritz. And you're going to let it start to work its magic, start to spread, start to work around. You can always just add a little bit more water if you need it to bleed a little bit more. You can tip it a little bit if you want for it to run. You could come in with your aqua brush and kind of dab it around. You can always come in and add a little bit more powder if you want to. The one thing that I did notice about the designer paper, as opposed to working with your watercolor paper, your thick ultra smooth, your thicker cardstocks, is that it really soaks up the water really, really fast. And so it needs to be a little bit more wet than you might do on your cardstock. And so you're just kind of start to sprinkle that across the bottom of your card, or the background of your card, and that technique is exactly how we made this card here. In this case, doing just a little bit of yellow and red. And I left it, I didn't make it so wet that they totally spread, because I really kind of liked that little sprinkly dot look. There's so many different ways you can have a total washed look. You can have those little crystals showing up like that. And then we simply finished it with the new Celebrate Youth Inlets from the Celebration set. So just again, spritzing it and letting it go is one way to work with those. So then another way, oh, sugar beets. They're both in the sink. We'll figure it out. We will make it work. I have a way to make it happen even without having my little palette. What I was just worried about was my little palette, and I don't see that handy at just a moment. I had washed them and they were in the sink. What I'm looking for, paper-wise, I'm also not seeing. You know how you get attached to a certain print or a certain design, especially after you start playing with stuff? That's okay. We're going to work with this one. Okay, so now we're going to come in with our aqua painter, and we're just going to add a whole lot of water. And I'm just doing the flowers because that's the only place that I want this color at the moment. There we go. And I love the aqua painters because they're so brilliant. They do not fade. People always say, well, why don't I just have watercolors? Just because everything is just a different medium, a different way to accomplish different looks. There's always just enough difference about them. And in this case, it's the vibrancy and the fact that they don't fade. And then the fact that there's some things that I can do with this that I can't do with watercolors. For example, the way that I mixed them with paste the other day and stuff like that. And watercolors don't react to water and just bleed and run like this. And so it's going to continue to work its magic, especially as the water is seeping in and working its way through. And you can just kind of go in and, I like to call it spot coloring. You're just coloring in one spot with that color. And I could do the same thing. I could continue to work the flowers and the leaves, or I could now come back in with traditional pencils and things like that and color those areas. So this actually is a hard product to use for people that are impatient and want things to be dry right away, ready to build on right away. I know I personally struggled with it and still struggle with it because it's like waiting for those old Polaroids to develop. I want it developed now. I want it done. I want to see those results. And it changes as it dries and gets soaked in and as it spreads around and stuff. Now, again, you could come in with your aqua painter and you could brush stuff around just a little bit if it's not quite looking the way that you wanted it to look and to move. So you could come in and do that. So again, and I did not tape this one down. You guys get the taping process and understand why you would do that. So let's grab another one here for just a second. And actually I have one. Here's a cardboard here. And let's just work with this one. Okay, and you get the taping process, so I'm not going to tape it down. We're just going to kind of keep moving. And since I don't have my handy dandy little palette that I use that I found at the dollar store, I'm simply going to use my clear block. Oh, these all need bigger holes. You don't want a lot to come out, but you do want some to come out. So let's just make that hole a little bit bigger. There we go. And so now I can go ahead and put a little bit of water on there. And I'm going to use this as a palette. And you can paint with your Brushos. So you're going to come in here and you're going to add your color. In this case, I'm just kind of working around the flowers. And so you can paint with them. And I'm going to, through the magic of TV, I'm going to bring one in and show you one that I've been painting on. So kind of made it really wet and just kind of came in and paint. But can you see how vibrant that is? That's not a look that I would get. And then I can go back in and I can spritz. Here you can see another one that I was working on, that I was painting. And again, making it really, really wet and then coming in and adding that color, but laying it on really, really thick. And in some cases, I'm going to leave the white because I like that contrast look. So you can actually pick up the color and you can color in. Another example of that would be here on these little guys. So I can come in and I can color. And I like how it pops because it's so bright against the black. Of course, it's still the white underneath, but it does pop. And even here on our stripes, I can come in and I can paint. So I can kind of use it like a watercolor wash, but it's just so much more vibrant. And then I can also layer colors. I could come in once this is dry and add a little bit of red back in, or I can make it a little like the shading like you would do with your blends. I can do shading with it as well too when I start to paint it. I can also then go back in and spritz and add a little bit of red in the corner or something like that. So let's see. Let's make it a little bit wet here for just a second, and now add that red over top as our layer and let it just kind of go to work there. I have to be patient. I want to come in and just start messing around with it. And of course, because it's the paper, you could always just give it a little bit of help there and kind of get it moving around. So let's take a look here for just a second. I talked about one of the things that I did, and that was I had taken and I had created a stencil. I was trying to do circles and all those kinds of things, and I picked vellum. The trouble with vellum, and let me pick this piece of paper, this is going to work better for us. The problem with vellum is that vellum is porous and it soaks up the water as well too, so it didn't work the way that I thought it was going to work. I tried spritzing first, and you can see where the little bit that's on there is already starting to spill around. And it just didn't run, and it didn't do what I wanted. And of course, the vellum started curling. And I'm not talking about the edges. I'm holding this one down, but the edges on the inside started running and they started curling. It still worked. You just have to move fast. You'd be better off to use acetate and make yourself a permanent stencil if you want to create shapes and things like that by brushoing through a stencil on something. So again, the vellum wasn't necessarily the best idea, although I am going to save the vellum pieces that I made, and we'll see if we can't salvage them and make something out of them. So again, Brushos work very, very well on your designer papers. Just know that they get a lot wetter, and you're going to want to allow them that time to dry, and then you're going to want to use a really good strong adhesive to hold them down. So let's go back and let me just show you again some of the samples that I was working on that I'm getting ready to finish. So look how pretty that is, and that is so, so bright. And then there's another one, and then this was one that I was just starting. There's another one. I just love this piece here in the colors. I need to try it a little bit with blue and green. And then that was the one from tonight. And then this is the one that's drying over here for us. And so let's go back to the cards and look at what we did. This card here, we painted around with the Brusho, and then we sprinkled some dry and spritz. So we kind of combined two of those techniques. So again, we kind of picked up color from a palette or from a block and colored around the image on the print, and then we spritzed some into the background. This is one that's done just like the flowers that you saw. And then I just went ahead and did a little bit of Wink of Stella over top. This is going to be my hubby's Valentine. And in this case, we did, here how I did the stripes on this one, I did them all in red. And I love the look of this, that kind of, it's like a watercolor effect, but it's a little bit deeper, and it's got just a little bit more, I don't know, texture and kind of a little bit more of a vibe to it, which is kind of fun. This little card here uses one of our celebration note cards, and this little element here, again, was just the color technique. This one, we just simply spritz the background, put the blue down and spritz the background. Blue on blue, kept tone nice and simple. And then the cards that I'm struggling with just a little bit, I thought maybe you could help me with here, idea-wise. So I have this beautiful piece, and have you ever like created a background or created a card and you think to yourself, oh my gosh, that's so pretty, I don't want to cover it up. And so this is one that I used and I painted. I used the aqua painter to pick up and I painted. And actually this one I did just a little different. I'm going to hold it up and see if you can catch all of the glimmer. It's actually more glimmery than just Wink Stella alone would do. What I did was I put Brusho in a palette, put a little bit of, and instead of water, I squeezed my Wink Stella right into it and used Wink Stella as the medium and then just picked it up with the aqua painter point. So I thought that was pretty cool. And this is kind of where I think I'm going because I want to preserve the front. So we have garden green, basic black and white. I'm not quite sure yet, but this is kind of where I think I'm going. Have you ever got to the point where you're playing, and you've got a bunch of cards, they all come out great, and then you hit a wall? And that's what happened with these elements, is I finally just hit that wall. So I've got to find a tiny little greeting because I want to preserve as much of the front as possible. But that's kind of where I think I'm going with this piece here. Then this one we can finish together because I know that I'm done and happy with it. And this one I used a technique I hadn't used in forever. So in this case, I selectively just sprinkled some of the dry powder, spritzed it with white. We let it dry, and you can see that it still buckles just a little bit. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you put a lot of adhesive on, because you're going to use that adhesive to literally help you iron out those wrinkles as you go. There you go. See? Nice and flat. Kind of ironing it out. And the technique that I'm talking about is tearing. I just tore this towards me so that the rough edge would be up. And I can't tell you the last time I did that. It's like, oh my goodness gracious, I forgot how much I love that. And so we've got that little element here. We have a piece of Very Vanilla cut with the stitch shapes. We have our sweet little kitty cat. We have the word friend from the Lovely Words framelets. So you have a nice, simple, sweet little note card. And I just want to go back in on this one. I think it's going to need a couple of little black rhinestones. So we're going to add just a couple of little black rhinestones to this one. Then this one I'm still not 100% sure of, but I just thought I'd bring it in just to show you kind of how the thinking goes sometimes. So this is another one of those striped ones like my husband's Valentine. We just watercolored the pieces. We have it matted on black and then Very Vanilla. And so far the only thing I've done is I've worked on 2 daisies. So you can shout out in the comment section below ideas that you might have for finishing them up. But that's kind of where I'm at so far. And I get torn sometimes between making cards really, really fussy and less is more. And in this case, I'm kind of leaning towards less is more. So that's kind of where I got stuck at on this card. And I think it's just kind of fun to show you that kind of creative process sometimes. And then this is the reason why I had the, say the words, Janet, the stencil made. I was trying to do kind of a piece of modern art, you know, a la MoMA or something like that, the Museum of Modern Art. And so across this one, I'm just going to put the word hope, look a little bit like a stained glass or something. And kind of reminded me a little bit, too, of the beautiful stained glass that we saw at the Sagrada de Familia in Spain last year. Not last year, the year before. So again, just having some fun playing. One of the things I can't recommend enough is just grabbing bits and pieces of paper and starting to play and experiment. And again, I had all of those pieces, and I didn't have these finished cards in mind when I started this process. What I did was I used the finished pieces to inspire then the finished piece, if that makes sense. I didn't start with the end in mind. I started with just playing. So make sure you grab yourself some Brushos, a little bit of water, your aqua painters, a spritzer, and just go to town having some fun. And then come visit me at remarkablycreated.com to see just what I do finally decide on as the finished process for these pieces. Thanks, guys.